Have you ever wondered how close you've come to danger without even realizing it? At Shivering Vault, we take you there, one story at a time. But before you drift off, consider liking this video, commenting where you're watching from and at what time, and subscribing to keep these chilling stories coming. Now, let's dive into these unsettling tales. A few years back, I had an old Honda Civic that was my car. When I got a new car, I decided to sell the Civic on Craigslist. This was before Facebook Marketplace had really become popular, and at the time, Craigslist seemed like the best option to get the most money I could for my car. If I traded it into a dealership, I probably would have gotten next to nothing. Since I already had my new car, I took some pictures of the Civic and then listed it online. Back then, Craigslist worked in a pretty simple way. You'd make a basic listing and your phone number would appear at the bottom. Anyone could contact you about what you were selling, either by calling or texting. In the first few days after I posted the listing, I didn't get much interest. The car was a little old, but it ran fine and had no major problems. I thought maybe my asking price was too high, but I wasn't in a huge rush to sell, so I just left the listing up as it was. I think I got 2 texts and a single call, but each person stopped responding pretty quickly and never seemed that serious about buying. Then about a week later, I got another text. The person asked, "Is your Civic still for sale?" I replied, "Yes, it is." They said they were interested, so I asked if they wanted to come see it and maybe take it for a test drive. They said yes. I asked when they wanted to come by to check it out. I didn't know anything about this person. They hadn't given me a name, but after I asked about a time, they stopped responding. For several days, I didn't hear anything. I assumed they had lost interest for some reason. The next week was just as quiet, and I almost forgot about the listing since, like I said, I wasn't desperate to sell the car. Then, one night, around 10, I was home alone in my small rented house. I got a text from the same person who had been texting me about the car. They sent a photo of the Civic sitting in my driveway, as it was right then. This was not one of the photos from the original Craigslist listing. The photo looked like it had just been taken, and the angle clearly showed it was taken from inside my driveway, on my property. I looked at the photo, confused, and finally texted back, "Are you at my house right now?" Almost immediately, the person replied, "I'm here to look at the car. Where are you?" I realized I had never given them my address, and we had never arranged a time. Plus, it was late at night. I asked how they had gotten my address, but they didn't respond. Moments later, I heard a knock at the front door. I couldn't see the door from where I was, and all my windows were completely covered. I was curious, but didn't want to open the door. I froze, trying to figure out what to do. Then, the person tried opening my locked front door. I called their number, but they declined the call. The knocking got louder. By now, I was really creeped out. I edged over to a front window and very carefully looked out. A man was standing on my front step. He was fairly large, but I couldn't make out his face in the darkness. After a moment, he turned and walked away. I moved back from the window to make sure he couldn't see me. A short while later, I heard a loud thud, like something had been kicked or hit. Then I heard a car driving off down the street. I looked outside, and he was gone. I tried to text the person again, asking what had just happened, but my number had been blocked. The next morning, I went outside and saw a noticeable dent in the Civic's door. I'm pretty sure he had kicked it, which explained the noise I'd heard before he left. I was angry and reported his number to Craigslist. This whole experience made me install security cameras around my house. It also made me take down the listing, and I ended up selling the Civic to a dealer. Since that night, the man never returned. I've used Craigslist a couple of times since, but very rarely and never to buy or sell a car. So if anyone listening still uses Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, Please be careful and stay safe. When I was 19, I moved to a city about an hour away from my family for college. Being so far from home was terrifying, but it was something I had to do. The problem was I had no idea where I was going to live. Rent was ridiculously expensive for a college student, and I wasn't exactly rolling in cash. So I started searching for rooms to rent, thinking it would be easy enough to find something cheap. Weeks went by, and I wasn't having much luck. Every place I found was way out of my budget. That's when my mom stepped in. She had always been the one who looked out for me, and she wasn't about to let me go without a roof over my head. One evening, she called me, excited, and said, "I found something. It's perfect for you, and the rent is cheap. You need to check it out." The ad she found on Craigslist was for a room in a house just a few miles from campus. The rent was only $300 a month, everything included. I couldn't believe it. I mean, how could something that cheap be real? It sounded too good to be true, but we were desperate. The homeowner, a middle-aged man, lived in the finished basement of the house, and he rented out the rooms upstairs to women. He mentioned in the ad that he preferred women as tenants because he had issues with male roommates in the past, citing loud parties and damage to the house. My mom and I arranged to meet the guy the following Saturday, and I honestly wasn't expecting much. I just wanted to see the place so I could move in and get settled before the semester started. When we arrived, the house seemed like it could have been nice. It was in a quiet neighborhood, and from the outside, it looked like any other suburban home. He greeted us at the door with a smile. His name was Carl. He looked like your average middle-aged guy. He had a friendly demeanor, and immediately I felt somewhat comfortable. As he invited us inside, I noticed the house was surprisingly clean. The living room and kitchen were furnished with nice modern pieces. It didn't look like the kind of place where someone would have just moved in. Everything seemed well kept. My mom loves to talk and get to know people, so they were engaged in conversation while I stood there quietly and observed the place. He then said he would show me my room. We head towards the staircase to go up, as I thought, since he said on the phone my room was upstairs with the other roommates. But he opens another door and we follow. He takes us down to the basement and opens a door to a very small room, no closet and no windows. "This is your room," Carl said with a smile. He told me I'd be sharing the bathroom in the hallway with him, and added that his bedroom, right next to mine, didn't even have a door. I glanced at my mom, but she didn't seem to notice anything strange. She was still in conversation mode, asking Carl questions about the place, the rent, and the other roommates. But I couldn't focus on her or Carl anymore. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong with this whole situation. "Mom," I tried to whisper, "this room isn't what he said it was. I'm not staying here." But she was too busy chatting to hear me. Carl continued to explain that the women who lived upstairs had their own rooms and they were all very independent. He led us upstairs to show me the other rooms. The first thing I noticed was that the doors to the rooms were wide open, like no privacy whatsoever. And when I looked inside, something felt off. The rooms were furnished, yes, but they didn't look like they belonged to women. There were no personal items, no clothes, no makeup, no little things that would make a room feel like someone actually lived there. I couldn't put my finger on it, but the rooms just didn't feel lived in. He was telling my mom stories about the women upstairs, how had gotten in too much trouble with alcohol, and another one had left without notice. But the details didn't add up. If they were really living here, why weren't there things in the rooms? Why didn't they have any personal belongings? I could feel a pit in my stomach growing deeper with each word he said. As I walked through the rooms, I noticed one closet that had men's clothes in it. The shirts and jackets were all neatly hung up, but they didn't belong to a woman, as Carl had suggested. And when I turned around, I caught Carl watching me. His eyes were focused, almost too focused. It wasn't a friendly gaze. It was unsettling, like he was waiting for something. I quickly excused myself, saying I needed to head back downstairs. But even as I walked back down the stairs, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. By the time we got downstairs, Carl was offering for me to come back the next week and have dinner with him and the other roommates to see if we would all get along. He said I could try it out for a week before committing. My mom thought this was a great idea, and I agreed, though my stomach turned as I said it. The moment we left the house and got into the car, I turned to my mom and said, "I'm not staying there. That guy is weird." The room was in the basement. It had no windows, no door, and the rest of the house felt like no one lived there. But she didn't get it. She was convinced I was just being paranoid. "He seems so nice," she said. "It's a great deal, $300 a month, and he'll cook dinner for you next week." Later that evening, my mom mentioned to my stepdad that we had visited a house and he wasn't having it. He immediately told her there was no way I was going to live there. He thought I was being overly cautious, but after hearing me explain all the strange things I noticed, he agreed that I shouldn't go back. By the time I tried to report the Craigslist ad, it had already been taken down. It didn't take much for me to realize Carl had planned for me to show up, to let me see the house, and then lure me into that basement room. He probably thought I would come back the next week for dinner, and that was when he would have made his move. I can't say for sure what he would have done, but that basement room with no way out, it still haunts me. I sometimes wonder what happened to the women he claimed had lived there, or if they were ever real at all. But I'm just glad I didn't find out. I still can't shake the feeling that I was inches away from something truly horrifying. This happened several years ago. During that time, I really needed some extra money. I was still in school and didn't have a lot of time to work at my part-time job. So one night I went on Craigslist just to browse and see what jobs were available. I had only been on Craigslist a few times before, but I had heard you could do odd jobs for cash. I didn't even go on that night intending to find work. I was just there to look around. However, not long into browsing, I noticed a job that seemed interesting. It was to help a guy move. He said he was moving that weekend and needed someone to assist. He lived alone and needed help loading up a moving truck and driving it to his new house. The drive was roughly 30 minutes, and the pay was really good. I think it was about $300. It said it would only take a few hours, so I decided to contact him right away. The next day, he responded and said I could have the job. His name was Mark. I was given his address and told to be there at about 5 p.m. When the time came, I drove to the house. It looked like a typical home in a standard residential neighborhood. Mark lived near the end of a cul-de-sac. 2 smaller moving trucks were parked on the street outside. I parked my car a little ways down, then texted him that I had arrived. He told me to come inside. Inside, almost everything was packed in boxes. We spent the next few hours loading both trucks. It was a lot of work and took about 1 to 2 hours to load them completely. When we were done, Mark handed me the keys to one of the trucks and told me to follow him. We left and headed to his new house. I had no idea where it was. I just knew it was about 30 minutes away. Mark told me his car was already there and that he would give me a ride back to mine when we finished. At first, Mark seemed like a fairly normal guy. We didn't really talk much while moving, mostly focused on the work. I followed him into an area I had never been to before. It wasn't far from some places I knew, but it was quieter and more rural. I remember driving down a really quiet dirt road with wildland and woods on both sides. Finally, he turned onto a long driveway. The house was on a much larger property than his previous place. We parked the trucks and carried everything inside. By the time we were finished, it was around 9 p.m. After we were done, Rob started to act strange. We were clearly finished, and I said that I should be getting back now. But Rob just sat down on one of the chairs in his house and told me to sit down and hang out. I figured he was just trying to be nice, so I did. After about 30 minutes of us sitting there, occasionally talking and watching the TV that was on in the room, I really wanted to go. I said again that I needed to leave now. Rob just ignored me when I said it. So I stood up and asked if he could give me a ride back to my car. Rob then asked if I wanted him to pay me. He claimed he forgot. I said yes, and then he got up and actually did pay me the $300. But then he went back and sat down. I started feeling uneasy. He clearly didn't plan to give me a ride. I took out my phone and texted a friend who lived somewhat close to the area. Luckily, he was awake and agreed to come pick me up. Mark continued watching TV for the next 20 minutes. It was really awkward, and I really didn't know what he was thinking. Finally, I got a text from my friend saying that he was there and parked out front on the side of the road. I stood up and said to Rob that I had to go once more. Rob completely ignored it. Then I just started walking to the front of the house. When I walked away, Rob finally asked me what I was doing. I said I was leaving and told him bye. Rob then got up and began walking after me. I walked faster and made it to the front door, and as soon as I was out, I sprinted down the driveway. I got to my friend in the car and went inside. We then left. I told my friend the crazy story as we drove off. While driving through the quiet neighborhood, I noticed headlights behind us. When we turned, the car followed. I suspected it was Mark. My friend made a few random turns, and the car mirrored us. We realized we should drive to a police station, and we did. The car followed us all the way, but it didn't enter the parking lot and turned away. We stayed at the station for a while, then my friend drove me the rest of the way to my car. When we got there, another car was parked right behind mine, the same one that had been following us. Mark was still inside. We didn't know what to do. My friend called the police while we waited on the roadside. Mark's car was so close to mine, it was almost touching. We explained everything to the police. They sent someone to his house while we waited. Mark stayed in his car the entire time. Eventually, the police arrived, spoke to him, and he went inside. I was able to drive home safely, and so did my friend. I haven't seen or heard from Mark since. It was such a terrifying experience, and I'm extremely grateful to my friend for helping me. I honestly don't know what I would have done without him. That's it for today's tale from Shivering Vault. If you have a story worth sharing, drop it in the comments or send it our way. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your fellow thrill seekers. As always, the Shivering Vault thanks you for unlocking today's tale. Until next time, the vault awaits your return.